Good morning. We're so happy to be here today. We have Council Member Sallie Alcorn, who has been a huge animal advocate for Houston Pets, and worked with Houston Pets. So we're so glad to have you here today, Sallie.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Is it okay to call you Sallie?
Yes,
okay,
of course.
Great. I'm Tama Lundquist, co-president of Houston Pet Set. Tina Lundquist-Faust, co-president of Houston Pet Set. Yes, and this is Conversation for the Animals.
Yes.
So, Sallie, let's just go back to your roots. Have you always loved animals?
I have always loved animals. I had my favorite dog of all time, Bodo, that was at my house in Fairmont, West Virginia when I was born, and lived till I was 16 years old. It was like my first love. And so really have always a standard poodle, big old standard poodle that we never really cut like a poodle. It was just this big shaggy black dog, and just slept at the edge of my bed, and like just was the sweetest dog. I'm still devastated that I don't have him with me. But yes, and then when I got married, we have had two dogs like forever. My and kids, of course, 4 kids and dogs, and just happy hum with pets. So yes, a long time love of animals. And then when Mayor Turner, this was a committee I did not ask for, but he said, I want you to chair regulatory and neighborhood affairs, and that has BARC in its purview. I was like, well, okay, here I go.
I can do that.
Right.
When did you come to Houston?
I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
7th grade to Houston. So really, other than going away to Austin for college and lived in Washington, D.C. for a little while after college, I've been a Houstonian since then.
Do you notice a difference between West Virginia and Texas and how they treat animals and how the animal welfare world is?
Well, I do go back to West Virginia. I have a lot of family there, and it's just so much more. I feel like it's so, where I go is Wheeling, West Virginia, which is such a small city compared to Houston. So it's not really, I don't feel like there's a bad problem or as much of a stray problem that we have. And a lot of people have a lot of land for animals. So that's more of the norm.
Right. I think what you're alluding to is when you come to Texas from somewhere else, there's especially northern states, and we know West Virginia's a little bit north, but more east. There is a significant difference in the animal overpopulation problem. And I think that that's how we got involved with this, was we came here and I was just alarmed at the number of animals on the streets.
Right. And how many of our rescue groups take dogs out of state because it's like they need them, and we've got too many. So
Exactly. And speaking of too many, we've heard numbers from BARC to experts that say there are, at least tens of thousands of strays on our streets, upwards to almost 1 million strays on our streets. What is going on, Sallie?
I've heard all those numbers too, and the amount that we would need to, we do try to make such an effort with spay and neuter, but we're not even close. We're not even close to what we should be doing. And I think what's going on is a lack of education. I think people really have to be educated about this issue and the importance of spay and neuter and microchipping and caring for their pets. I think it's kind of almost like just something that's nice to have, but I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to the greater picture of having a pet. And I think it's all education.
Yeah, it is. And it's, we've looked at it too from an educational standpoint. It's education where you can't educate, you legislate. And so we know with other issues, if you can't get them under control and kind of change the culture, the way you change cultures philosophically is through legislation, through laws, and so do you see our city sort of going that way? So today is the 24th. Last week we had an incredible ordinance go into effect. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I sure do. And it was basically your help, PetSet's help, so many stakeholders, so many in the animal welfare community, Texas Humane Legislative Network, everybody, so many people helped with this. It was a big group effort. We had not modernized our ordinance and really fell woefully behind other cities and what they were doing with mandatory microchipping and then what the state did, trying to mirror what the state did on laws about adequate shelter. And all of our whole kind of system was just old and outdated.
Mhm.
And you're right. If you can't educate, if you can't get to everybody's house and say, look, these are the things you need to do, you do have to legislate. You
Yeah.
do have to mandate some things. And in Houston, we're really averse to mandating anything. We have strong property rights and we're Texans, you know,
It's Texas.
we
Yeah, it
own
is.
our pets, we own our land, we're going to do things the way we want to do them. And so it's difficult. And I think that's why it's maybe taken so long in Texas to kind of catch up. And in Houston, especially, you know, we've come a long way at BARC, still have so much more work to do. But I think the recent changes will make a big impact. I hope they will make a big impact. And the puppy mill situation, I know we'll probably walk through some of the things that happened in the ordinance, but I was most excited about the mandatory microchipping and the puppy mill, getting rid of, not allowing people to sell from any inhumane source or something that we couldn't track.
Right. Well, and that's a really good point. You know, the humane source. When we in Texas, Houston, are euthanizing animals in our shelters every day, they're dying on our streets, horrible, cruel deaths. It doesn't really make sense to continue to import animals from puppy mills, take them from backyard breeders. It's simple economics if you're not concerned about the animals, but on the humane side, it's cruel.
Right.
And so talk a little bit about what the ordinance really means for pet stores specifically.
So I'm sure everyone knows how pet stores over the years have really changed. I mean, when I was a little girl, man, we walked down the street and we looked in the window and we bought a little puppy from the pet store. That was kind of how you got animals. And that's really the really reputable, good pet stores have all moved away from that model, kind of by virtue of this very point. We have an abundance of animals that need homes, and there's so many good rescue groups. There's animal shelters in every city and county. There's plenty of animals to go around. So the better model is you sell everything that you need to take care of a pet, food and equipment and everything that has to do with pets. And that's a big business in and of itself. And then have adoption events and with using, you know, the nonprofits and the rescue groups and the city's animal shelter. It's just the right way to do it. Just like you said, why would we add to the number we already have?
Yeah.
There's plenty to go around. So that's really what this ordinance is about. We did not have very many. We had 5 or 6 stores that sold animals where we couldn't track. BARC doesn't have the manpower to track where these dogs are coming. Reputable breeder or not, we don't know. You have to follow this chain. I've researched this a lot. There's a chain of events that happens before that animal comes to that store, and we have no way of knowing that. Where we have much better tab on the relationships we have with the nonprofits and the rescue groups, and of course our own animal shelter, where we know about this animal. We know about this animal, and so does the person buying the animal. They know about the animal that more than they do from this whole puppy mill situation.
Well, and it's kind of a consumer protection law
Absolutely.
as well, because when you get a puppy mill dog, many times they're so overbred. They have not been treated well as puppies. They've been removed from their mothers way too early. So we're seeing major behavior cases when a puppy's removed from the mother too early. And then that's not something you can train out of a dog. Those neural pathways are set. And so we're seeing behavior issues. We're seeing medical issues. We're seeing later in life dogs with hip dysplasia, things like that. So it's not only economics, it's about protecting the consumers.
Right.
So do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Right,
too?
Absolutely. And I did my own independent research on this too, because, you know, when you're working with advocacy groups, you want to make sure you're not just getting this terrible story happened at this store. So you kind of have to do, and my team and I really dug in and kind of did our own research on what was happening. But we were finding that. I mean, consumers were really paying thousands of dollars for dogs.
Yes.
And get it, 3 weeks later, there's some terrible problem. And they're just like, the store just kind of washes their hands of it.
Yeah.
And so that, it wasn't a one-off, I thought, because sometimes you get from advocacy groups, you get kind of these really conflated. You think they could be conflated stories. So, but when I really dug in, I mean, those were all very and easily verifiable with local authorities, with consumer protection groups that had been documented. So I knew there was something there, and I knew because there was the first iteration of this was to we'll go ahead and let the ones that are here stay.
Yes.
And because again, Houston does not like to hamper with somebody's business. Kind of the rules on the books at the time you started your business are the rules on the books. We do that with a lot of flooding, everything else. If you got your property then, you can go by the rules at that time.
Yeah.
But this was so important to me and others I know in the animal welfare community because of that research, because we knew people were being taken advantage of and animals were being taken advantage of. So that's why we really stuck to our guns on the whole grandfathering issue. And one dog from a puppy mill is too many dogs from a puppy mill.
Yeah. And we know because there are national groups now that are aware of this issue and bringing a lawsuit against some of these groups, some of these pet store owners, because there are so many cases. So you're right. It's not just one-offs, it's multiples. And what they were also doing too is allowing people to make payment plans on these dogs and then charging exorbitant interest rates. And, we know quite a few cases where people no longer have the dogs because they've passed on or had to humanely been
and they're still
euthanized.
Paying off
and they're still
high interest loan.
Off.
That's awful.
It is.
Yeah.
So it is, as Tina said, it's a consumer protection issue. It's a quality of life issue because we have so many animals.
Right.
We don't need to bring in anymore. There's so many good reasons to stop the flow of sick animals into Houston, into Texas, until we get our own issue of overpopulation under control. And that's a lot of what this ordinance was about. And kudos to you and the city council, especially you and your team, for leading this and digging into it and doing some education of the other city council members on why this was important, because we know you had to put up a fight to get this passed.
Well, this is the stuff I like at City Hall. I like digging in on ordinances and figuring out how to improve them. So that was really fun for me. And you guys, everybody, all the stakeholders were such help with it. But I think of course everybody on City Council loves animals and wants to do the best thing. But when you got into the details of it, it was very very and even mandatory microchipping. I mean, everybody was really for that. Once you told them, we're not knocking on people's doors and arresting people for not microchipping their pets, but it's again an education thing, and this is what you have to do. And we're trying. You have all these complaints about our shelter and it not or having to euthanize animals, or it being overcrowded, or not taking in extras. Well, you know what? If we could return that animal in the field. Of which I think we did 74 animals in the field, so a small number in our big city. But in December, that was our number. And that's 74 animals that didn't have to come through the shelter, be held, figure it all out, have expend resources on that. So that it was just about talking it through with the council members. But I would say it wasn't a tough sell, because everybody understood it was the right thing to do. Council members Gallegos and Cisneros have really been leaders in their areas, have such an issue with stray animals, and so they really were my big champions of this.
And we have to give a shout out to THLN.
Yes. Oh yes,
Texas
absolutely.
Humane Legislation
Shelby Bobofsky,
Network.
hope you're listening.
Oh gosh, yeah.
She really took it to heart from the very first meeting we had with her and Gloria Centeno, and we were just like, hey, I'm all about it. She did so much work. She looked at every ordinance, and I think she had worked on a lot of the ordinances herself. So she really was able to tell me what they were doing in Dallas and San Antonio and Austin and all the other cities, and where we needed to catch up.
Help write the ordinance itself so that it made sense, so that it was conservative enough, but it protected people and animals. So big shout out to Shelby.
Right.
If you're just joining in, this is Conversations for the Animals with Councilmember Sallie Alcorn. We're talking today about animals, animal welfare, animal ordinances in Houston. I'm Tina Lundquist-Faust, co-president of Houston Pet Set, and Tama Lundquist, co-president of Houston Pet Set.
And I'm Sallie Alcorn, and I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yay. One other thing about the ordinance that requires animals to be humanely sourced when they're sold through a pet store, I think people don't understand all the nuances, the layers of it. The other thing that imported animals do is contribute to the overpopulation problem, because so many of those animals that are either from backyard breeders or puppy mills go into our shelter system. People purchase them, they become very sick, ill, they require huge veterinary expenses and care, and people can't afford that. And what happens? They either get dumped on the streets or they get turned into the shelters. Old data shows that 25% of the animals that go through the shelter system are purebreds, which is
Wow.
hard to believe.
I don't think I even knew that stat.
So, and it, that may have changed over the years, but that's a large number. That's why we have so many breed-specific rescue groups. And so when people are concerned about, this ordinance and us trying to over-regulate business, they need to understand that there's many, many layers to this. And there's really, I said it last night, there's no reason. The only people that are adversely affected by this ordinance are the people trying to make money off the backs of animals.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a win, 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 win across the board for consumers, for the city, for everybody. And this is also not saying that every breeder is bad. There are responsible breeders
Absolutely.
out there,
Yes.
and we want to recognize them.
Sure.
And kudos to you for maintaining your integrity, for caring for your animals. I love purebreds. Tina and I are Westie fans. I'll never have another one again that's not a rescue, because there are even Westies, those beautiful, beautiful creatures. There are enough out there that need to be rescued. But it's not all breeders
Right,
are
and we
bad.
do have a process
Yes.
by which we have permitted
Yes.
breeders that go through that process. But even, and that was kind of brought up, but we just can't track them. We just don't have the bandwidth to track every single one. So, and also sometimes they're buying the animals at the pet store to breed themselves, the animals from the pet store. So you're really getting into that whole overpopulation.
And I think responsible breeders would be glad for this ordinance and glad for more regulation, because they get lumped in probably with all the bad eggs.
Right.
And so, as to your point, responsible breeders are probably in favor of something like this. In fact, we've talked to a few, and they have wanted to partner because it is important.
And they don't themselves sell to pet stores, and they don't want the responsible ones. And we all know that the word of mouth is the way the reputable breeders really get their business. I mean, it's all word of mouth. It's not just happening on a store.
And if they're doing it with a purity of heart, and they do it because they love the breed, or they're going to love animals, they don't want to see these sick. Probably hurts them as much or more than anybody to see these sick puppies coming in, weeks old, shouldn't even be away from their mothers, and thrown into a cage and diseased. And so they don't want to see this at all. It's hard for them too.
Exactly. And they're too young to even spay and neuter. They're way too young. So that was a big issue. If we did allow that to continue, we would get some assurance that the dog would be, but we're like, the dogs are too young. And then how are we going to follow up? I mean, how do we know they're going to be spay and neuter? We'll give, so that was another issue that came out. And that it's this whole ordinance, we work on a lot of things at City Hall that are not there. Everybody kind of walks away kind of like, I didn't get what I wanted, or there's still some hard feelings, or you're mad about this or that. Not this one. I mean, we had complete, the council members were all on board. The animal welfare community was all on board. There was not the consternation, really. And that rarely happens at City Hall.
It's great. Well, it's great to hear. It's a nonpartisan issue, and people care about their animals. And once they understand the issue, which is why we have these podcasts, for people that maybe aren't as informed and don't have time to do the research, I think that they get on board with it as well. Right. So I know we have so much more work to do in Houston with regard to animals. What's on the horizon? Are there other ordinances?
Well,
What's next?
we need money, and luckily we you guys are great at raising money, but luckily we had the bond election recently, and which passed overwhelmingly. And one of the proposals. There's a total $478 million general obligation bond. We do these every 4, 5, 6 years for our buildings, for everything that the city owns, capital improvements. And we did one, and it's going to give $45 million to a new BARC facility. So thank you, all the Houston voters out there that supported this bond. That is huge. I mean, you guys know what our facility is like there. I mean, Jordan and I go out there, my team and I go out there, and we see people working in a like an old tea shack thing that was supposed to be a temporary building for 6 months, and they've been there 20 years or something. It's really poor conditions, not just for the animals, but for the workers there. The animal, a lot with the adoption center, of course, is better and newer, but we really need help out there. So that's going to go a long way. We used close to a couple million, 1.5 million in the American Rescue Plan Act monies. I'm going to still try to get more for spay and neuter efforts. We have, as you well know, a very low capita spending per animal, very low. Like half of what other cities. We're at about $5.90 per resident.
It's the lowest in the country for any major city.
It's insane. So last year during the budget season, I got a measly $315,000 added just to get us back to the 590, because the proposed budget had us down even below that.
Wow.
And I was like, we are moving the wrong direction. I worked it out so I could at least get us back to where we were, but that's just not nearly enough. Yeah. We have a really healthy fund balance. Of course, we've got a lot of things on the horizon when this federal money dries up at the end of 24, we're going to be hurting, and there's a lot of needs in the city, but we have got to prioritize animal welfare in our budget. Budgets are moral documents, and you've got to put your money in that area. Yeah. So we're doing a new budget called an outcome-based budget, and one of the outcomes is fewer dogs on the street. So we're going to have to put some money there.
And the residents want this. Houston PetSet has done studies. We've partnered with Rice, University of Texas, and gotten the numbers, and residents say, yes, put more of my tax dollars toward this, because this is 25% of residents said this is my number one problem in my neighborhood, above crime,
absolutely,
above everything else. So the residents want it, and we need it as a quality of life.
Absolutely. I mean, it's right up there. People, it's public safety, it's public health. And people, you're right. I go to many neighborhoods where, forget all this other stuff you brought on your talking points. We want to talk about stray dogs. That's all we want to talk about. I went to something in Northeast Houston, and it was a public safety meeting with the police chief and everybody else. And they really thought they were, going to be focusing mainly on violent and crime and thefts and things. And it was stray dogs. It was stray dogs was the huge topic. And if you're don't feel safe getting out and running out of your house and taking a jog or going to the local park, I mean, that's a real issue for us.
It's a third world problem,
right?
And
100%.
we're a city and a state,
right,
that we do have resources.
We've got to get with the program, and we have to. What I'm hoping this new form of budgeting we're doing is kind of like the programs that have kind of run their course, or we don't need any more. We need to, a lot of times government will just keep funding something because it's an established program. And we're going to have to really take a hard look at, we did that. That was a good program back in the day, but we need more money. We're half of what other cities are paying.
And there's an ROI on animal welfare, because we can fix this problem.
Oh, yeah.
Animals want to be rescued. They don't want to be living on the streets.
Right.
Taxpayers, as Tam alluded to, taxpayers are not going to object to us getting this problem under control.
Right.
And once it's under control, once we can get to what we call manageable populations, then you reach a level where there's a status quo. But it's going to take a Herculean effort for probably the next 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years.
Oh yeah.
But then it is
it's under control.
It's under control.
And it feels like this city is ready for this. We know that there are over 300 registered animal nonprofits working on this. We fund 70 plus of them. We funded $4 million at least.
Can't believe how much money y'all raised at that gala.
But
that was amazing.
It was so nice you were there. But it was so the nonprofit and private sector is doing the lion's share
Oh,
of the
heck
work.
yeah.
They're holding BARC up in a way, and Harris County in some ways. So yes, we're just ready for
Right.
more like you,
Right.
Sallie, more leaders to get on board and say, yes, this is one problem we can check the box
Right.
of. When it happened in Dallas, they had one death from a stray dog.
Wow.
Everybody honed in on that.
Yeah.
We're not going to let this happen again.
Yeah.
Houston has had many
Yeah.
deaths
Yeah.
from stray animals, and we still are waiting for that light.
And the city needs to do a better job of leading on it. The city needs to do, you're right, we have an incredible, thanks to you guys and all the nonprofits out there and the ones that you fund and raise money. I mean, our philanthropic community, ask anyone.
Great,
I mean, Houston
yes.
is just known for throwing money at good causes. And this is a really good cause. And I think the city could do a better job of kind of leading that charge and really I think there's a lot of opportunity in even our own foundation at the city to really be much more aggressive in going after the dollars. And I think from where I sit, it's all about public, and we need more public investment too. We need more tax dollars to go towards animal welfare.
I'm glad you brought up philanthropic city, because it is a very philanthropic city. We came from Minnesota, Minneapolis, and it's philanthropic, but not like Houston. And the animals are still on the very, very bottom. They're lumped in with environmental. They fall so far short of arts, medical, children. I'm not going to argue with children. Political, so many, education, so many other causes. And that's why we were so excited that our soiree did well.
Yeah.
We're excited by organizations like CAP that raise lots and lots of money for this. CAP has been in the trenches for so long because we need to elevate this issue.
Right.
We need to, and people say, why do you spend a lot of money on galas, soirees? We don't love doing that.
Yeah.
It's so much work. It just about kills us every summer.
my
I'm not
gosh.
kidding.
We're bringing in movie stars and
It'll
everything else.
steal your soul. But it is so important for us to continue to elevate this cause, because the people that can fund it, the corporations, the citizens with resources, are the ones that we need to get on board.
Right.
They don't see the problem.
Right.
There are certain zip codes where you will never see a stray dog, and if you do, wow!
I'm glad
It's
you brought
one-
that up, and
yes.
that's an issue on city council too.
Yeah.
Because the in areas where this is not a big issue, they're like, wait, no, I need money for X. I don't need money for that. So it's it has to be a citywide thing, and I try in every kind of venue where I am to say, you guys. There are neighborhoods where this is really, I mean, you care about your neighbors. You care that this is a safe city. This is a big issue.
Yeah.
And this is something you have to pay attention to.
Yeah. I think we should do a, what do you call it? Field trip. Would
always
city
Yes.
council ever do a field trip with
I
us?
know I've gone on several, but yes, and I think everybody's invited.
We're going with you.
Everybody's invited. I mean, the things I saw, and
my
it's
God,
just
I
that the ones that are training dogs to be in some kind of fight, and they wear those weights on them. That just, I'll never get that out of my head.
Yeah. Or
And
the ones standing in mud up to their knees,
Yeah.
and that they're in empty houses, and it's
very, very sad. And so, yes, I know that the nonprofits always invite people to go on them, and I think that's a great idea to kind of revive that and get people out there, because it's a matter of just understanding what a big problem it is for our city as a whole. We don't want to be known as this city with the,
That's just it.
we
don't.
It's bad for our image, and we are doing so much great revitalization in a lot of areas, and it's gonna hold us back.
And we don't want Houston to just catch up. Houston does things so well. I mean, so
We
so
need to
well.
lead.
We need to, why don't we lead on this? We lead on so many other things. Medical. We do well with the arts, space,
Sports.
We have some good sports teams. I
Lance
was getting to
McCullers.
it. Oh, sorry. Lance McCullers. I know a hero
Yeah.
in so many ways,
Right.
on the field and in the trenches for the animals. I mean, we have so what, it's not, this isn't rocket science. And
Right.
I don't mean that in a cliche, or,
Right.
or
Sure.
that's not a, what is it? What do you call it?
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Yes, thank you. No pun intended. But this is so easy. Why don't
Right.
we just jump ahead and teach the world how to treat animals because it's a moral and ethical responsibility.
Right.
We domesticated them. We have to take care of
Yeah.
them. It's heartbreaking when you see these poor little creatures who can't call. They don't know when the weather's going to change. They don't know when we have a freeze come. They cannot escape and go someplace to let someone know that they're being abused on a daily basis. We
Right.
just, besides the dog with the zip tie around his nose this week, we picked up one that was hit by a car. Nobody stops. You know, the dog has to be euthanized now. He's never lived in a home. He's lived on his streets.
Wow.
You know, our hearts break
Yeah.
every day from these stories. Another one that we had to, one of our teammates drove to the valley and picked up because it had been hit with a machete 4 different times in its neighborhood. And it got to a vet, but there was no one down there to take the animal. And we said, Houston Pet said, we cannot put this
Right.
animal back on the streets. Our wonderful team member, Miss Courtney, I'm
Wow.
driving down to get the dog.
Oh,
So she drove
Like in the middle of the night.
in the
right?
middle of the night. No,
Amazing.
yeah, like after work, she
Amazing.
got back at 3 a.m. and was
Wonderful.
on her phone at
Yeah.
7 the next morning, taking care of Arthur, the dog that got hit by the car, and
right.
now we have to put to sleep, and he's never had a happy day in his
Oh,
life, you
gosh.
know. But we're going to give him a week of good care and love and
Good.
cheeseburgers and
Oh,
bless him. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Though. These stories are.
Yeah.
It's not just numbers; it's heartbeats,
Right.
and it's so heartbreaking. And the compassion fatigue amongst our team, amongst the rescue groups, amongst the private sector and the nonprofits, is staggering.
Right.
It's staggering right now
Right.
because, as you said, Sally, we need help. And
Yeah,
passing
you need
an
help, and the
ordinance.
city needs to stand by
Yeah,
you guys,
and
and
you-
you guys
yeah,
need to get
and you're
some
doing
help
it.
from the city.
Yeah, we're not beating you up, Sally.
No,
you're doing
feet
it.
up
You're
away.
leading the charge, and we're so grateful. But
Yeah.
passing ordinances is huge because it's a mile or an inch in legislation is a mile in rescue. We say. I probably have that backwards,
Right.
but it doesn't cost anything
Right.
either. And
No.
so if you can look at the laws and not over legislate, don't put tie people's hands behind their backs. Nobody
Right.
wants that.
Right.
But let's be humane about this.
Right. We really wanted to tie all the shelter. You mentioned the dogs left out in dangerous conditions.
Yeah.
So the state did a good job of kind of defining that adequate shelter.
Yes.
Let's let a dog
goodness.
turn around and have enough room to turn around and lie down and be away
Right.
from standing water and all that. So we put that in our ordinance. The problem again is manpower and getting
Enforcement.
people. We get calls, hey, this dog's not being in inadequate shelter, and we saw a lot of it in the winter storm Uri and it was very sad. But it's the priority of calls. Dangerous. Some dog bite or something goes ahead of a lot of other things. So it's we've got to get some more animal control officers out there.
One more question, then we'll let you go. I don't. But with the new building, obviously there's going to be more room for animals. Will there also be the manpower that it'll take to get the animals off the streets? Will the budgets increase so that we can have more ACOs?
I am going to fight for that, and we're going to have to. We're going to have to raise that per capita spending on animals. We cannot conquer this problem.
Yeah.
My team has gone out with them and kind of seen what 2 people have to do in this huge area,
Yeah.
and there's just no way. There's no way to get to it. So yes, we will be fighting this. I invite everybody listening to please get involved in this year's budget cycle.
Yeah.
It's really important. This new outcome-based budgeting that we're doing this year is very much keyed into what the community wants.
Mm-hmm.
And people that are elected to office, they like to hear from people. They want to support people that come out and talk. So, really just I'll make sure that PetSat has all the information on when the kind of budget workshops are. And I think it's if you can organize a good advocacy group to really get that number up. The operating budget. It's the operating budget. I mean, we're thankfully now have a capital budget that's going to produce perhaps a great new facility. But the operating budget is where we need the help.
Well, and it's the taxpayers' money. They
Right.
have a say. People have a say in
Right.
how that money is used.
Absolutely.
So,
It's their money.
is there a way that people can follow you or their council member? What's the best way for people to become better informed?
Yes, well, we all have websites. We're
Mhm.
all Councilmember Sallie Alcorn @large5 @HoustonTX.gov. Social media, we're all on social media. There is actually a budget survey out right now that the mayor has put out. And I did a budget survey when I got elected called Your 2 Cents. Get it? It's Your 2 Cents. And put it in. And it had a lot of room for comments. This one doesn't. I wish it did, because I got a lot of comments about, you pick these categories of where you want your money to go. And then you could write a lot of comments. And I got so much out of the comments. And a lot of people advocating for more spending on animal welfare. But he's got a survey out now, the administration, and it's good, and it's going to kind of be the leading part in our discussions, but on the budget. But just any way you can contact council members, come to public session, whatever you want to do to kind of advocate for additional dollars to be spent in animal welfare. That's the thing to do.
And it is an election year, so Houston
Yep,
Pet Set
people
will
are
be
paying attention.
advocating at the state level. We're not an advocacy group, but we'll be working
Sure.
with an advocacy group, Texas Humane Legislation Network, and we'll also be working this summer. We'll have a forum, mayoral forum, and an
Great.
election forum.
Great.
So we'll also send out a questionnaire to every candidate, because we want to know what their stand is on animal welfare.
Excellent.
So, we feel like this should be a platform issue for every candidate,
Right.
and we'll make it a platform issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Use your strong voices.
Well, it's us, and it's all of our supporters. It's all of the nonprofits. We always
Yes.
give a shout out to the people that are in the trenches
Oh, yeah.
every day, doing the heartbreaking, backbreaking
You guys
work.
are supporting them, and they are doing great work. And boy, the government can certainly not do it alone.
Can you imagine what the city would look like without these animal
my
nonprofits?
gosh. Yeah.
It would
No.
be crazy.
Yeah.
It would be.
It would be
it'd
in every neighborhood.
It would
It would be in
basically
every
be
neighborhood.
uninhabitable,
Yeah.
I think. So, yeah,
Exactly.
shout out to them. So,
Yeah.
and all of this can be found also on our website,
Right.
HoustonPetSet.org. So we'll always try to keep up with what's
Right.
going on in city council, ordinances, state legislature. As Tina said, it's a year that they're all in office. So
Right.
there's going to be a lot happening. And we, again, a mile in rescue is an inch in legislation is a mile in rescue. So
Right.
this legislation and ordinances are very, very, very important. And if you want to get involved in any way to help animal rescue, animal welfare, this is a good way to do it. And it's your
Absolutely.
voice lots of times. It's just your voice.
Absolutely.
We're so happy to have
Well,
you
thank you for
here
having me.
and to
I
have
really
you in city
enjoyed it.
council.
Well,
And
thank you. Thank you.
I mean-
This is my dream job. I love this job so much. And,
You can tell.
And this is this has been a really, really fun and meaningful issue for me to work on. So I'm grateful for all your help. I did very little other than just try to push it through. But
did a lot.
But
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you guys and everything you do for animals in Houston. And it was awesome to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.